I was sitting at the small wooden table in the living room, trying to fix the loose button on my old coat, when Victor's voice suddenly hit me like a slap in the face. "Pay the rent, or get out." His words echoed through the whole house. For a moment, I thought I didn't hear him right. I slowly lifted my head, and there he stood, arms crossed, face red, chest rising and falling like he had been holding this anger for months. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. Clara rushed in from the kitchen the moment she heard him shout. Her hands were still wet from washing dishes, and she looked helpless, like she wished she could erase the moment. She stood between us, trying to protect me with her small frame. "Victor, please," she whispered. "Don't talk to my father like that." But Victor didn't care. He pointed at me again, his finger shaking. "I've had enough of this. He stays here for free, eats our food, and doesn't pay a single bill. This is not a charity home." He turned back to me, staring hard. "If you're going to live here, you need to pay rent. If not, pack your things." Clara closed her eyes, hurt by the words. I could see how torn she was, but she didn't know what to do. She loved her husband and loved me too, and both of us were pulling her heart in different directions. I stayed quiet. I had learned long ago that shouting back never fixes anything. My hands were still holding the thread and needle. For a second, I just looked down at them, thinking how silly it was to be fixing a button while someone was throwing me out of a house I bought with my own sweat many years ago. Victor walked away, still muttering under his breath. Clara came closer. "Dad, I'm sorry. He's been stressed. He doesn't mean it." But I knew he did. A man only says something like that when he truly feels it. I stood up slowly, my knees making their usual soft crack. I placed the needle on the table, grabbed my coat, and walked toward the hallway. Clara followed me, begging me to wait, but her voice sounded distant. My mind felt heavy, like someone had placed a bag of stones on my chest. I reached the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't rush. I simply opened it and stepped outside. The afternoon air was cold, but it felt cleaner than the air I had been breathing inside. As I reached the small gate, I looked back at the house, not with anger, but with sadness. I remembered painting the porch while Clara played in the yard. I remembered my late wife standing in the doorway, calling us in for dinner. This house was once full of warm memories. Now it was filled with noise, tension, and a man who thought I was a burden. I walked down the street slowly, hands in my pockets, thinking of everything I had stayed quiet about for too long. And for the first time in months, I felt the silence around me making space for a decision I had avoided far too long. Before we continue, please comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting revenge stories. After leaving the house, I walked slowly along the quiet street, letting the cool wind brush against my face. I needed to think, to understand why I had finally decided to step away. Victor's words were still ringing in my ears, but it wasn't just anger that guided me, it was clarity. I remembered how I ended up living there in the first place. After my wife passed, Clara insisted I stay with her and Victor. I didn't want to be a burden, but I loved my daughter, and I wanted to feel close to her. The house was small, and Victor's attitude was easy to ignore at first, but over time, small complaints became daily fights. He criticized my cooking, my sleep schedule, even the way I walked across the living room. And the worst part? He believed he was in control. He thought he was running the household and that I was just a visitor who needed to follow his rules. But what Victor didn't know, and what Clara didn't know either, was that the house belonged to me. I had bought it decades ago, using money I had saved from my small business ventures. It was never about wealth, it was about security. I had kept it secret because I wanted Clara to live a peaceful life, free from arguments about money. Victor, in his arrogance, assumed the property belonged to him by marriage, but that assumption was far from the truth. That afternoon, I sat on a bench in the small park near the street. I closed my eyes and thought about what I could do. I realized that the man who yelled at me had no idea who he was dealing with. I had waited patiently, avoided confrontation, and let him feel in control. But patience had its limits. Respect had its limits too. I pulled out my phone and called Mr. Dalton, my real estate agent. He had helped me manage properties for years and understood the importance of discretion. "Mr. Dalton," I said, my voice calm, "it's time. Prepare for the sale of the house. I don't want to involve anyone else. Make it quick and clean." Mr. Dalton paused, a note of surprise in his voice. "Are you sure, Harold? This will upset your daughter and her husband." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "It's not about upsetting anyone. It's about correcting something that's been ignored for too long. I'll handle Clara. Victor, he'll learn soon enough." I ended the call and leaned back on the bench, thinking about how easy it had been for Victor to forget who truly held the power. All this time he had acted as if I had no right to speak, no right to stay, no right to exist in my own home. Yet now, in the silence of the park, I felt control returning to my hands. Clara had loved Victor for his charm and confidence, but she didn't know his confidence was built on a false foundation. The truth would come soon, and when it did, it would shake their understanding of everything. For the first time in a long while, I felt a calm certainty. I had chosen my moment. I had chosen my path, and nothing would stop me from doing what was right. Not anger, not fear, and certainly not Victor. After deciding to act, I met Mr. Dalton the next morning at his small office downtown. The walls were lined with neatly organized folders, each holding years of property records and transactions. I felt a strange calm enter me as I handed him the old deed to the house. "Harold, this is straightforward, but are you certain you want to move forward?" Mr. Dalton asked. His voice was careful, like he was handling fragile glass. "I am," I replied, my tone quiet but firm. "It's not just about the money. It's about ending this chapter before it causes more harm. Handle it discreetly. No one can know until the final paperwork is signed." Mr. Dalton nodded. "Understood. I'll contact a buyer who is ready to pay full price, cash in hand, no delays." While he worked, I thought back to how I had acquired the house in the first place. Decades ago, I had poured long hours and sleepless nights into a small business. Every dollar earned went into saving and eventually buying this property. It wasn't about luxury or status. It was about creating a home for my family, a place where Clara could grow up safe and happy. I had never imagined that years later someone would demand I pay rent in the very house I had bought. By the afternoon, Mr. Dalton called. "We have a buyer, Harold. They are offering $900,000. They can close within a week." I paused, thinking of Victor's reaction. He had lived in ignorance, thinking he could control everything because he paid bills and managed the household. But the truth was far different, and soon he would learn it. "Do it," I said. "Prepare the documents for signature. I want this done quietly. Clara must be protected from the shock as much as possible." Mr. Dalton smiled faintly, sensing my resolve. "Very well. I'll handle everything. The sale will be final before they even know what's happening." As the sale progressed, I returned to the neighborhood, observing the house from a distance. Victor was outside, inspecting the yard as if trying to assert authority. Clara was near him, her hands nervously fidgeting with her keys. They had no idea what was coming. I felt a strange mixture of sadness and satisfaction. Sadness for my daughter, who would feel torn, and satisfaction in knowing the truth would soon set things right. I thought about how life had a strange way of balancing itself. For years, Victor had acted as though he owned the house by right of marriage. Now, reality was quietly slipping past him. I remained invisible to him, the quiet owner in the background, and that gave me an unexpected peace. The next few days were busy with paperwork, signatures, and coordination. Everything had to be precise. Any mistake could reveal my involvement too early. I kept myself distant, letting Mr. Dalton manage the details. Every day I walked past the house, remembering the memories it held. This was the hardest part, not because of the money, but because of what the walls had seen, the life that had grown within them. Yet I knew this was necessary. Victor's arrogance had gone too far, and Clara's peace depended on it. The house had served its purpose for me, and now it would move on to someone who appreciated it, leaving the past behind. The day the movers arrived, the house felt strangely different. The familiar hum of daily life was replaced by the sharp sound of boxes being taped, furniture being wrapped, and the low murmur of strangers handling things that had been mine long before Victor set foot in the home. I watched from a distance, standing near the sidewalk. Clara appeared frazzled, rushing from room to room, carrying small items she thought were important. Her face was pale, and I could see the tension pressing down on her shoulders. Victor, on the other hand, strutted around trying to act in control, but there was a nervous edge to him. He barked instructions at the movers, insisting on where everything should go, but the confusion around him made his voice sharp, uneven. Inside, the rooms looked almost unrecognizable. The cozy living room where I had spent quiet evenings with Clara now had furniture stacked in corners, cushions piled high, and fragile items packed in boxes that might never hold the same warmth again. I remembered my wife sitting here with a cup of tea, and for a moment I felt a tug of sorrow, but I knew this had to be done. Clara approached me quietly as I stood at the gate. "Dad, what's happening? Why are we moving? Where are we going?" she asked, voice trembling. I shook my head slightly, giving her a calm smile. "It's temporary, my dear. Just let it happen. Things will become clear soon." Victor overheard us and stopped in his tracks, looking toward me with a mix of suspicion and anger. "Dad, why are you out here? Shouldn't you be helping pack? Or are you just enjoying this?" he shouted. His words were sharp, but I stayed silent, letting him vent. He had spent years believing he had the right to judge me, and now his anger had nowhere to land. The movers were almost done by noon. Boxes were stacked in the driveway, furniture was loaded onto the truck, and the house looked empty in a way that made it seem smaller, colder. Victor checked the rooms repeatedly, muttering about forgotten items, and his frustration grew with each passing minute. Clara tried to calm him, but it was clear she was just as lost. She had trusted both of us, her father and her husband. But now the balance she counted on was shaken. I stood quietly on the sidewalk, observing the chaos, feeling the weight of all the years and all the memories inside those walls. Finally, as the movers prepared to leave, Victor's voice cracked slightly. "I don't understand. How is this happening? Who authorized this?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I simply walked slowly down the sidewalk, letting him stew in confusion while the reality of the situation settled in. Everything he thought he knew about control, authority, and power inside that house was about to change. And in that quiet moment, I realized something important. Sometimes, staying calm and letting events unfold is far more powerful than shouting, demanding, or trying to prove a point. The moving truck had almost left the driveway when my phone rang. It was Victor. I could hear the panic in his voice before he even spoke. "Harold, what's going on?" "The movers are here. The house. How is this happening? You can't do this." His words tumbled out, fast and sharp. I stayed calm, sitting on the small bench outside the park. "Victor," I said quietly, "I own the house. I sold it." There was silence on the other end. Then his voice, shaking now, asked, "You, you owned it? How could you sell it without telling us?" I took a slow breath. "I didn't tell anyone because I wanted Clara to live peacefully. But you yelled at me, demanded rent, and treated me like a stranger in my own home. That's when I decided it was time to act." Victor stammered, trying to find words. "But the house, Clara, I can't, I don't understand." "You will understand soon enough," I said. "Clara will be fine. She will know why I did this. And now, it's time for you both to face the consequences of your assumptions." Clara, standing beside Victor, had finally stopped packing. Her eyes widened as she listened. "Dad, you, you owned the house all along?" she whispered, a mix of disbelief and awe in her voice. "Yes, my dear. I never told you because I wanted to avoid unnecessary conflict, but some lessons can only be learned the hard way." I paused for a moment, letting the weight of my words sink in. "I wanted to protect you. That's why I acted the way I did." Victor's voice was quiet now, almost defeated. I, I didn't know. I thought, I thought I was in charge. I never realized." He trailed off, unable to finish. I felt no anger, only calm satisfaction. The truth had been revealed, and the false control he had exercised for years was finally gone. I knew this moment would change how Clara and Victor saw me, and themselves. Clara took my hand gently. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what he was saying was hurting you so much. I should have stood up for you sooner." "You did what you could, Clara." "That's enough," I said softly. "The important thing is that we understand now, and that the future can be better." I ended the call with Victor and walked toward the empty house one last time. The memories of laughter, quiet evenings, and family meals filled me with a bittersweet feeling. But I knew this was the right decision. The house would now belong to someone who appreciated it, and Clara and Victor would carry the lesson forward. Sometimes, life teaches us lessons in ways we never expect. And sometimes, the quiet, patient path brings the greatest justice. As I watched the moving truck disappear down the street, I felt a deep sense of relief. Not because of money, not because of proving a point, but because respect had finally returned to its rightful place, and I had done what needed to be done, with dignity and quiet strength. The story ended, not with anger, but with understanding, and a calm that only comes after a long struggle finally finds its resolution. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting revenge stories.